right, why don't we go ahead and kick it off? First of all, thank you for joining us for another one of the Lightedge webinar series. Today I've got a great panel here with me, so I'd like to give them a minute to get introduced. We're here today to talk about securing our hybrid workloads across the organizations. We've got representatives from Lightedge with Bill, Al at SentinelOne, and then Tim over at Arctic Wolf. Love to give them a minute to kind of go into their backgrounds and give us an overview about what we'll be talking about today. Tim, would you like to start us off?
I would love to. Thank you. Thank you for having me as part of this panel. I'm excited as well. My name is Tim DeWard. I'm the Regional Vice President of Sales Engineering at Arctic Wolf. Essentially what that means is that the sales engineers within the enterprise segment across the US are part of my organization, and we engage with our partners and our customers in helping them find cybersecurity solutions.
Awesome. Al, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thanks. I appreciate you folks having me back. Thank you very much. I am Field CISO at SentinelOne, and we do a lot of thought leadership. We engage with our largest customers to figure out what their tech stack looks like and how SentinelOne can help achieve, threat resiliency, if you will. Prior to this, I've had a long-standing career in security engineering and architecture. I also worked for an MSSP and ran a SOC for quite a long time. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Bill, would you like to round us out?
Sure. So I'm Bill Fitzgerald, Director of Security here at Lightedge. I've been in security for 15 years now, from small startup SaaS that have grown into unicorns, and started my career in the data center world, and now I'm back in the data center world, managed services.
Awesome. And I'm Michael Hannon. I'm our CISO here at Lightedge, and I'll be moderating for us today. So kind of our opening statement of kind of why we're here. So our enterprises rely on a patchwork of data centers, private clouds, public clouds. This hybrid reality has increased complexity, expands our attack surfaces, and strains our security teams. So today we're going to focus on real-world strategies of how we can potentially stay ahead of threats, which I know is tough, our coordinated responses, and hopefully we can attempt to build some lasting resiliency. So the first place we're going to go is, talking about where and how we can identify gaps in the hybrid cloud landscape. So the first question I'm going to pose to the group here, where do traditional security approaches break down in the hybrid environment? And Tim, I'll kick that to you, and then we can just kind of keep going from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thank you for the question. A lot of it comes back to, at least in my humble opinion, a lot of it comes back to visibility. So Michael, you just mentioned that in a hybrid environment, we're kind of expanding the attack surface, right? We're moving from a traditional architecture where maybe everything was in the four walls of a traditional data center, and now we're putting applications in SaaS platforms and different infrastructures as service platforms while maintaining some amount of data center presence, traditional data center presence as well. What really, as we all know, kind of accelerated this was things like COVID, when everybody had to go remote, and that really kind of knocked down those four walls very, very quickly. And what happened as a result of that is a lot of organizations just kind of lost control of their attack surface, or at least understanding and having visibility of that attack surface. And as a result, what we saw in the years that followed was a tremendous increase in the amount of cyber attacks. And of course, we're still seeing that today. It's not on 60 Minutes every Sunday like it used to be just a year or two ago, but that doesn't mean that it's not still occurring. In fact, cyber losses today are higher than they were even just a couple of years ago, when it was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal every other week. And again, a lot of that comes back to just simply understanding what are, I should say, all of my attack surfaces, where are my vulnerabilities, where are my assets, where is my data? And really it is, to a large degree, just kind of an asset inventory and a data inventory challenge and problem. We talk a lot at Arctic Wolf about broad visibility, and the reason we talk about that is because if you can't see something, if you can't monitor something, it likely is your weakest point. from a security perspective. We see this over and over again in the incident response portion of our business, where customers are generally breached in the area in which they're not looking or monitoring. So again, a lot of it comes back to how can I get a good viewpoint of my entire environment, my entire attack surface, all of my assets, and really uncover where is all of my data.
That's fantastic. And maybe Al, you can kind of go into a little bit around the same question, and I may add, because Tim's adding a little piece there of where our visibility gaps potentially are. Are they identity, endpoints, workloads, and maybe kind of expanding on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Visibility is a huge challenge. I remember during and to your point, Tim, like right around COVID, the amount of remote workers exponentially grew. The amount of attack surface also grew exponentially. And I feel like the more cloud services we leverage doesn't necessarily mean the less on-prem stuff we have. A lot of time we build out cloud environments with the intention of lift and shift, or of re-architecting to microservices, or to do something new in the cloud, or to replace some infrastructure that may already exist. But that could take 10 years, right? Meanwhile, you're running parallel environments, and you actually have more compute and more attack surface than you did before, right? So, I feel like to add another problem to the mix of, where do security tools fall short? I mean, certainly visibility. And we've been seeing, I think that was really 4 or 5 years ago, the rise of CSPM, right? And the rise of the visibility tools in the cloud to identify all of your assets. In fact, show me a company that has an authoritative and complete CMDB, and I'll show you a company that's lying to you. You know what I mean? That really doesn't exist. So, but I would add to this a problem of scale and of context, right? I mean, we see that legacy tools aren't great at keeping track of ephemeral workloads, for example, like the container revolution and Kubernetes, right? Like how many ephemeral instances that are up for 5 hours, 24 hours, and then back down again. Do you need endpoint protection on that? Do you need vulnerability scanning on that? I don't know. I mean, it's gone in 24 hours. I'm like, yeah, but it takes about 24 seconds to pop a box. And meanwhile, I have 23 hours and 59 minutes to move laterally across your cloud. So, I feel like a modern approach really needs to understand the ephemeral nature of the cloud, right? And have the capacity, the elasticity to expand and contract based on what your cloud is doing, and be able to give you that over time stability and resiliency in your on-prem infrastructure that is typically a lot more static than what you're deploying in the cloud. So, again, visibility to your point, Tim, I would add scale and context to the big kind of, where traditional security tools fall short, if you will.
No, that's some great info. And like, we know our security teams, are often similar size to what they were a couple of years ago, and having to protect or understand what other teams are doing internally to protect the hybrid landscapes become really challenging. Bill, I know we deal with this internally. Any thoughts on this before we kind of pivot to the next question or topic?
No, I think Tim and Al hit that nail right on the head, right? It's visibility. What do I not know is really where I fall short, right? Al mentioned a complete CMDB, right? Like that's a unicorn I think we all chase in the security world. The other thing is legacy systems, right? Yeah, well, our cloud expands and contracts. We also have our legacy systems that don't necessarily play nicely with the same tools that our cloud environments do. So we have to, continually juggle functionality, visibility, and getting that protection on those endpoints and across the environment.
Absolutely. And Tim and Al, maybe giving you guys a second, specifically for SentinelOne and Arctic Wolf, bridging these gaps around visibility in the hybrid landscape, are there any unique things that you guys bring to the table or ways like success stories that you guys have seen in supporting organizations?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one first. One of the things that Arctic Wolf does really, really well is we do a great job of ingesting log sources from every part of the customer's environment, whether that is 100% in the cloud, whether that's 100% traditional on-prem infrastructure, or most likely it's a combination, some combination of whether that's a 50-50, 90-10 is irrelevant. But rather what we do is we help a customer ingest all of that log information into a central platform that is the Arctic Wolf platform. We don't require a switching out of technology. We don't require a certain amount of cloud deployment or traditional infrastructure deployment. We don't demand that, if you're running this particular firewall, you have to switch to a different firewall. Rather, we pull all of that into our platform and we do it in a way that is really, really simple. You simply just forward the logs. And we don't charge based on logs or events per second, those types of things that would cause a customer to say, well, do I really want to send this? Because the moment that people start making that judgment call, we're missing part of the attack surface. And that goes back to the core of what we were talking about. We want to be able to see everything. And then really importantly, what Arctic Wolf layers on top of that's incredibly unique is then we provide the monitoring service on top of all of that. What we see from a successful attack perspective, customers are actually getting breached and going to IR companies and making insurance claims, is generally not a lack of tooling. Meaning that there is tooling somewhere in the environment, there's logging somewhere in the environment that is saying, hey, something suspicious is going on here. But the challenge at the end of the day is there is so many events that are generated every single day, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of security events that are generated every single day by even the smallest customer, that nobody has the time, effort, and resources to be able to go and look at those 10,000 or 100,000 events and say, is this good or is this potentially bad? And that's the other piece of visibility. Just because I'm pulling in the logs into a central location doesn't necessarily mean that I'm good or safe. I need a system or a process or people going through each one of those and saying, is this good? Is this legitimate? Or is this nefarious activity? And being able to flag that, because the threat actors know what triggers are critical or high. They know that our customers are incredibly resource constrained. And so they know that the vast majority of our customers are only looking at critical and high alerts. And so they operate in these low-level messages, these low-level events, buried in the hundreds of thousands of events that happen every single day. And this is part of what we do that is incredibly unique, is sifting through every single one of those and determining what the risk is and what action needs to be taken, if any.
Very good. Al, anything to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, great summary there, Tim. I feel like that is one of the things that will distinguish a traditional security, siloed security tool that focuses on one particular area of resiliency or protection with a more modern platform that is able to basically contextualize in real time unfiltered data from any number of sources, right? Obviously, we have grown in the industry and are most well known for our endpoint detection and response platform that has expanded into something that runs on a native cloud native data lake, right? And you hear data lake thrown around quite a bit nowadays. And I feel like that is, I guess, what we could call a modern centralized repository of security data, is because you want to be able to consume any type of data, right? Structured, unstructured, logs, telemetry, metrics. To Tim's point, when you start deciding what is the most important things to look at, and you want to start dropping a bunch of other data that you don't feel is going to be immediately valuable to your security context. You are dropping a lot of what goes unseen, which are the low fidelity, step-by-step build of an attack, right? Nowadays, the living off the land phenomenon has been happening for a few years now, quite a few, probably close to a decade, to be honest. And it's the leveraging of these built-in, good, well-known good binaries like PowerShell and WMI and little databases in your operating system that you can shove things into, schedule tasks, services, right? All of these things are being leveraged to build a nefarious outcome step by step with known good, benign tools. So how do you maintain that context? The only way to do that is really to centralize all of these events that are being generated where you need them, when you need them, and you need eyes on glass. You need people looking at it.
Absolutely. And I think that helps us kind of go towards the next place, because I know in having conversations with a lot of our customers, and this is even things we've lived with internally, how we, can combine the coordinated detection and response across environments, especially as organizations are growing, and whether that's rolling out new products that live on different infrastructure, or they've gone through acquisitions and inherited different types of infrastructure in different places. What does good coordination look like between cloud, data center, endpoint security, and those eyes on glass? How can teams successfully kind of consolidate down in platforms, and kind of what does that look like? And Bill, I may start with you, because we recently went through an acquisition in the last 12 months of where the focus is and how you make sure that you don't drop anything as you're trying to combine the organizations.
That's a great question, Michael. As we're combining organizations, right? Like maybe the previous organization wasn't looking at everything, and you think that you're looking at everything. You take a step back and you start auditing everything again, right? Like you start with the basics, right? Like what does the network look like? And you do those basic discoveries across the network, just validating what you've been provided during those acquisitions. And I'm sure that, Al and Tim can speak to this as well, right? Like they need to be provided what the landscape looks like in order to be able to protect it. And then combining those from our perspective, right? Like combining that into one pane of glass is very difficult, right? Because we do have that, how do I migrate out of one tool into another piece, right? Like, can I just flip a switch? It's never that easy, right? So you have to approach it and approach it from a perspective of what can I easily win? What can I easily shift? And then plan the rest of your shifting while keeping all the tools that you have, and maybe new ingests, or identifying new tools that can handle, again, that new modern as well as the legacy that you're getting.
Good points. Tim and Al, any expansion on that?
I'm going to echo something that Al said a few moments ago. Al, you talked about as you deploy a new application or a new server in a cloud instance, a lot of times you have to take the old or keep the old around for a period of time. That can be months, that can be years. And I think that really speaks to the heart of the question here, Bill and Michael, that you guys just posed and answered. It's that balancing act. Now, then there's the other aspect of it of what if I get bought by another company? What if I buy another company? What if I merge with another company? What if, again, we're deploying into a new environment and it's not a net new application? There's an existing amount of data. It's like, how do we combine all these things together? And again, it all comes back to how do we get to a single repository, a single source of truth when it comes to security event information? That is step number one. Is there's got to be a centralized place where all of these logs and all these events can be viewed. But that's only step number one. We see a lot of customers that are quite successful in doing that still get breached. And it goes back to a point I made a moment ago, which is you can have it all centralized, but if nobody's looking at it, if nobody's taking action on it, it's really just a big dumping ground. It's just a pile of stuff that's not providing any value to the organization. There has to be somebody that has operationalized that information 24/7, that has the expertise to say, this is good, this is bad, or this looks like it could potentially be bad. And they have the expertise then to say, and this is what needs to be done about it. This is the action that needs to be taken. Now, there are various forms of automation that can help out with this. If it's a known attack, if it's a known attacker, if it's a known attack type. But as we know, threat actors are constantly evolving. And so we will not always have visibility into that attack type historically so that we can automate that. So it's really a combination of those two things, which is I got to get everything in one central place first. Then I've got to have people and process that 24/7 with expertise that are looking into this, that can decipher what is good, what is bad, what is normal, what is abnormal.
Yeah, so I agree. I agree 100%. Assuming you do get a critical mass of security event data in one place, there are a couple of things that are fast follows there for you to be successful, right? One of those things, the way we see it as SentinelOne, is there's two critical things that Tim spoke to and didn't exactly put it in these words, but he spoke directly to that. First is detection logic, being able to detect the right things at the right time. And another thing is response automation, being able to automate as much as possible so that you have the time to get into the details of what is not automatable yet, right? So, a lot of times so SentinelOne's gotten beef in the industry about saying the autonomous SOC, right? Or saying that the SOC can be fully automated. And that's not by any means what anyone is saying. What we are saying is that if you have to do things more than once, you should be able to automate it, right? But there's always things every day. Attackers are evolving, and there are things that we've never seen before. And these are the things that human intelligence and human manpower need to have the time to focus on, not the 100,000 alerts we've seen already for the last 24 months in our environment, and we've been ignoring because we don't have the bandwidth to handle, right? So being able to apply detection logic as quickly as possible to a critical mass of centralized security data, and then be able to automate the response to these detections as much as possible is certainly, I think, within our grasp. 20 years ago, last thing I'll say to that, 20 years ago, when I first got my first SOC gig, right? I mean, I walked in the door and my director's direction was automate everything. That's it. That's the first words out of his mouth. He's like, hey, welcome to the team, automate everything. And we weren't talking about machine learning. We weren't talking about AI. We weren't talking about generative AI, none of that. We were talking about SOAP API scripts, right? We were talking about, scripts written in C and stuff and Java. I mean, it was crazy. Yet our directive was automate everything. And the idea is that we should spend more time trying to figure out how to automate our responses than actually responding ourselves manually, because manual response is just not going to cut it anymore. Hopefully that resonates. It's the way we look
Absolutely.
at it.
No, I think you guys are all hitting the nail on the head. And as infrastructure or IT leaders or in the security space for any of us, that is what most platforms are trying to sell us, or what we're trying to deliver internally is And it's the story we're trying to have resonate with our teams themselves is we will take some of the autonomous tasks off your plate, the repeatable things that we see so that you guys can focus on the things that matter. That's a very core and critical thing for us to do. The ability to focus on those things and reduce dwell time or other things like that is critically important of giving people time back to either go test stuff or look at the things that matter within the, the panes of glass in front of them. So I think what you guys are saying there is really hitting the nail on the head. And it kind of goes into the next piece of if we've automated and done what we can, or we've, put the platforms in place, if teams are still overstretched, and we'd like to improve outcomes, we don't have the ability to add headcount. As we look at like leveraging managed services and, Lightedge is a business based on extension of staff and helping businesses focus on the things that matter to them, especially what does, maybe pinpointing certain aspects of managed security, if we're outsourcing or leveraging third party to support that, what can that do for teams? And Bill, maybe I'll start with you because, Lightedge leverages some outsourced services internally to help augment and support our staff. Maybe we can speak to that. Then Al and Tim, happy to pass it over to you guys.
Sure. So, right, like you really hit on the key there, right? Like, how do we augment our staff, right? We can only have eyes on glass for so long because of our staff constraints, right, across all the industries. So being able to augment with responsive partners that can take at least that initial swing, right? Like it's great to partner with them, but they may not know the nuances within your organization. So you're still going to have some of that expertise within your own organization. And that's how we play it, right? Like we have a 24/7 partner that is monitoring a lot of ingest for us, but they don't necessarily get the nuance, and they don't necessarily know that, in a timely fashion that an employee is left or a new employee is onboarded. So maybe what they're seeing looks unusual or abnormal. I think Al said earlier, it looks abnormal, but maybe it is totally normal because of shifts within the organization that they just don't have the visibility in. And that's why you need somebody on your team or some buddies, plural, on your team that can take what they're fielding to you and making sure that it is a real event or is something that is normal, and then they can add it to their monitoring as, oh yeah, Bill is really supposed to be doing X, whatever X happens to be.
Yep. And Tim, I see you're off mute, so happy to kind of segue into your thoughts from an Arctic Wolf perspective and some of the success stories you guys have seen where it works well.
Yeah. Agree with Bill on that. There's two reasons. There's more than two reasons, but I'll give you two fundamental reasons why going either managed services or outsourcing or bringing in a third party, an outside party to help out with this. Reason number one is just to help, right? Because there's a lot of work to be done. Al talked about automation, which I completely agree with. Like we want to automate as much as possible so that nobody has to manually do the work. And then there are times where humans need to get in and actually do the work, hands on keyboard and eyes on glass and those types of things. But the second reason, probably the most important reason to consider working with another party like SentinelOne and Lightedge and Arctic Wolf is perspective. Right? If you are tackling cybersecurity on your own as an organization, and you might have 2 or 3 really, really talented cybersecurity people on staff at your company, that's fantastic. At the same time, I'll say you're limited to the expertise and visibility of only 3 people. Cybersecurity, to solve the big challenge that we're attempting to solve, is a massive team sport. And if the knowledge you have is only limited to 2 or 3 people in one environment, then that goes back to visibility to a degree, which is you're only aware of what you're aware of. And so one of the biggest reasons to work with another organization like, again, Lightedge and SentinelOne and Arctic Wolf is because you want the perspective of what is everything that is happening out there in the world, because I could potentially be a victim of one of those attack types. In other words, if you're a manufacturing company, if you're a healthcare company, and you're trying to tackle cybersecurity, you want to know almost down to the minute, what are the latest attack types that are targeting healthcare providers, maybe on the other side of the country or potentially on the other side of the world, because it only takes, in some cases, a number of hours before that attack type is at your front doorstep. And so having partners that have that viewpoint becomes invaluable to you. If I were to continue down the path of using an illustration of healthcare, a lot of companies, large, small, they will have some kind of physical incident response plan in place. And what I mean by that is maybe you're, again, a small manufacturing company, and maybe you have some first aid kits in the front office, and maybe you have a defibrillator machine, and you have one or two people that are trained on just the basics of how to respond if somebody's having a heart attack or something like that in your organization. But at the end of the day, what you really want to get to is you want to get that person, if they're having some kind of health crisis, you really want to get them to a trauma center that sees those types of things on a daily basis. They're your true experts, and you're going to reach out to them. You want to have training in-house just to sustain long enough to get to a true expert that knows how to deal with this on a regular basis. That's what I'm talking about when I say you really want to have access to outside expertise.
Tim, that's good stuff.
That's a great analogy, Tim. I mean, I hadn't heard it described in that fashion, but I think it's spot on. I feel like, and really that's what essentially I was going to say is, you leverage the people that are good at what they do, the best at what they do, to do that for you. Ideally at a lower cost, and you can and higher value, and with better expertise than you can do it yourself, right? So if you have an organization, for example, and I'll speak to SentinelOne, although Arctic Wolf is awesome, and love how you guys work. But we have our own R&D, our own threat research, right? We have our own threat intel. We have tens of millions of endpoints that make up our fleet of Sentinels out there. And so we do see every time there's a geopolitical type of situation, right, which seems like every day now, there's something new happening in the world. There are new cyber attacks that are being developed, and we see those. We see those literally traveling across the globe, a lot of times from Europe to North America, from North America to Asia Pacific and Japan and these other areas. And we see these attacks traveling, and you can start to build intelligence and resilience. The sooner, the better. And you have people that can incorporate, in our case, detection logic for things that may not have gotten to you yet, but they're already impacting other organizations in other verticals that are similar to yours. And by the time it gets to you, ideally, we'll have a detection already in place and pushed out, and something that somebody can respond to. So I think leveraging someone who has the proper perspective is critical in being able to, stay ahead of the threat, if you will.
Awesome.
To add something to that, Ali, you brought up a great illustration of how attacks can move actually from geographic regions to other geographic regions.
Yeah.
The point I want to add on to that is we are actually coming up on a really important date. By the way, I presume that the vast majority of people on this webinar today are in the United States. And in the United States, very shortly, we will be celebrating something right around the corner, July 4th. People are taking vacations, people are taking time off, IT staffs are at minimal levels. And the threat actors are keenly aware of this. And we see attacks happen in greater numbers and greater volume around Christmas and Thanksgiving and Mother's Day and 4th of July being a really,
And 4th of July is a Friday this year too. So we got to be careful, man. Thursday night is going to go down.
The threat actors know that there will be minimal staff, probably starting Thursday morning, definitely on Friday, and all throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
So there will be, because we see it year after year after year after year, which is there will be an increase not only in attacks, but successful attacks. And a lot of our customers, unfortunately, will be in a position in which they are at minimal levels to be able to respond and respond effectively. And so back to the question, why is it important to have either managed services or outsourcing or some other provider that can assist you? This goes back to the core of what SentinelOne does. This goes back to the core of what Arctic Wolf does, is we can help monitor your environments. We can help detect and respond to things when you are at minimal staffing. Right? This is where we can augment your environment to help out. And not just on the 4th of July. Really, as I mentioned, it's 24/7 by 365, but specifically in those situations to use an upcoming holiday to highlight the point.
Tim, that is going to take us to kind of our final segue, and that's fantastic. And to reiterate, attackers are relentless with their timing, and we see that time and time again. So that's a really good call out. So within cyber resilience, we would be remiss if we didn't kind of try to merge things together between business continuity, disaster recovery, and what cyber teams are doing. That's often a very disconnected area for businesses where, whether it's a compliance team or others are running, the bare minimum to meet certain requirements and not really factoring in real world examples, throwing in the holidays and limited staff and other things like that. So the question I'll pose to this group is, how should customers think differently about business continuity and disaster recovery with today's threat landscape? And Bill, maybe I'll kick that to you, and then we can just kind of go down the line again.
Sure. So, right, like we can all run tabletops till we're blue in the face with our small little teams, and that's usually how it goes. I have taken the approach of, I'm not the team, right? I have other players within my organization and external to my organization that I can leverage to help me understand some of the real world implications of what's happening, how I can go about responding faster. So I've expanded our tabletop exercises to be more encompassing, to include my other teams, right? At Lightedge, we have a lot of different teams that are specialized in their area, and including those into the tabletop one lets you understand that, even though it's still an exercise, people may not know what to do, right? And you also sometimes, because of the nature of the exercise, you're bringing in high-level folks and they all want to be in charge. So you have to start taking command of the situation. And just like, and I hate to use this example, but like if there's a car accident and you witness it, right? People start freaking out and somebody's got to take command and go, Tim, call 911. Al, go direct traffic away from these. And then, right, let's get these people to safety. And if nobody's doing that, then everybody's trying to do it all at once. And we found in a recent tabletop exercise where we included these other teams, until somebody on my team stepped up and was that captain and pulled everybody in, people were just running around thinking that they were doing the right thing. Oh, let's do this, let's do that, right? Like, so practice. The more people that you can practice with, the more likely it will not be as chaotic in a real event, right? If you practice, there's, right, like, again, practicing. Professional teams, they practice what they're doing every day so that they know when they hit the football field, the baseball field, they know, even though it's going to change slightly, they know what they're doing. Everybody has a role to play, and not everybody can be the quarterback on a team. So That's my right, like practice, and then get to a point where you're practicing and you're actually leveraging your backups, right? Like let's say that something, right? Like let's take it all the way from detection all the way to what our response is. Are our backups good? Do we have the right communication to go out to customers or internal staff, right? Like practice it all. That's I think the key, so that everybody's not consumed by the chaos of an event.
Yep. Alan, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. I think you're right on, Bill. One of the things I going back to when I first, more than 10 years ago, I started. I got hired to run information security for HBO at the time, and Game of Thrones was shortly upon us, and everyone was all worried about what's going to happen if Game of Thrones leaks. And I was like, well, first of all, beyond the fact that our subscribership is going to go through the roof, because it seems like every time something leaks, we get more subscribers, not less. But assuming we're not leaking it ourselves, we need to put together a team, a cross-functional team that is able to respond to an incident, not only technically, but operationally, technically from the security point of view, but also operationally from the business continuity and disaster recovery point of view, and also communications, right, from the PR point of view. Because although I enjoy speaking, I don't think anybody wants me to be talking to the press in the middle of a breach at HBO or Warner Brothers or whatever, wherever I happen to have worked at the time. So I feel like business continuity is no longer just about business uptime. It's about maintaining trust and operational integrity during an incident, during active threats, right? Like immutable backups are available today. Like it is easier to implement full backup and recovery procedures today than it was 10 years ago. I mean, I feel like 10 years ago, every particular custom application needed its own business recovery, a business continuity or disaster recovery plan. You needed to have physical servers on standby. You needed to have, images that, every day would be kind of like you needed full backups and deltas and, snapshots. And, like a lot of this has been streamlined over the last 5 to 10 years. And rollback recovery of systems, business continuity should be part of and should be triggered as part of your response playbooks and your incident response plan and your security, information security plan, right? If business continuity and disaster recovery does not already play a part in how you respond to incidents or being able to roll back and your operating system, or, it's not about, my security tools, I have full faith in my EDR, so we don't need rollback. No, I mean, I'm an EDR company and I'm like, rollback's not a bad idea, right? And then, and beyond that, business continuity, that's not a bad idea either. And then, being outside of a blast zone in case of a nuclear threat, that's not a bad idea either, right? So, you really need to integrate all of these into a full incident response recovery plan, and I feel like a lot of those things are kind of missed. So the integration of a cross-functional people, within departments, and then also just think about incident response beyond information security to include those same teams, the business, the crisis communications, the PR, the people that run our backups. Like all of this is part of incident response nowadays and should be treated as such.
I'll add a couple things. Bill, great illustration, I think, with the car crash, because that's what it's like. It's probably, except for it lasts significantly longer when customers are breached and have a significant incident. It can last 6 months. Al, I agree with your points on kind of the business continuity plugins. Cyber resiliency, at the end of the day, your incident response plan, more specifically, should just be a component of your business continuity plan. As an IT industry, specifically around infrastructure, which is kind of my background over the last 25 years, we've done a really good job of saying, hey, when a server fails, when a part of the network fails, if a data center goes down, this is what we're going to do. We've documented it, we've automated it, we've practiced it, we continue to practice it. And for the most part, there are a lot of similarities that we can draw from when it comes to a cyber event. However, there are absolutely some nuances as well. And Ali, you were touching on this just a moment ago, which is it's one thing to say the server, the storage array, the network is down and we can't access the data. You, Mr. Customer, our customer can't access your data for a period of time, or maybe that data is lost, versus we think that data has been stolen. We think that data has been compromised and actually could be your own data can be used against you. And so there are different ways in which you need to respond. Now, the systems might still be down, right? So part of that is similar to a traditional business continuity DR plan, but the nuance is what if that data is stolen? How do I know that it's stolen or that it isn't stolen? And then what do I do about that and how do I communicate that? And so going back to Bill's example of a car crash, you really need somebody who has been through this many, many times before that can say, I know exactly what to do in this situation. You go do this, you go do that. CEO, you need to do this. CFO, you need to do that. IT, you need to start doing this. Outside vendors, you need to start doing these things. Someone who can project manage and take control of this situation because they've seen it before becomes really, really critically important. And that's where having a good incident response plan really, really helps out with a lot of that. If you don't have a solid incident response plan built today, this is something that Arctic Wolf can absolutely help you out with. And on the flip side of that, a key part of our business anyway is helping to prevent these things in the first place. Because we have a lot of visibility in terms of what can go wrong and how it goes wrong, we've become really, really good at advising our customers on how to prevent these things from happening in the first place. It's great to detect and respond too, by the way. It's even better to prevent in the first place from these things actually happening. You layer those three things together, and now I've got layers of protection for my business, and that's the place you truly want to be.
That's really good. And I think we got a really good audience member question that I'd like to pose. Maybe we can quickly answer it before we kind of wrap up. But I think it ties to what we've been talking about, and specifically this last kind of topic that we were hitting on. But Lightedge has seen this with the ramping up of incidents and threats and those types of things. The cyber insurance world has also tried to rise to the occasion, try to get ahead of the threats and the payouts and those types of things. How do tools like Arctic Wolf or services and SentinelOne help with customers or organizations going through that process? And I can speak that Lightedge, every year our cyber insurance renewal process becomes more challenging. We have to prove the things we're doing, and the simple answer from me is tools like what both SentinelOne and Arctic Wolf offer help us provide our landscape in a very positive light. And it reduces the complexity and questions that we get from our cyber insurance providers. But Tim and Al, I'd love your thoughts, because I'm sure this is not only a selling point, but a question you guys get quite a bit of how you guys can assist organizations going through that.
Absolutely. I'll start. So I'm going to start kind of at the end and work backwards. And what I mean by that is I mentioned a couple of times that Arctic Wolf, one of the services that we offer is incident response services. And quite frankly, it's a service I hope you never need from us, because that means something substantially bad has happened in your environment. But we are very, very good at it should you need it. And that informs us on the prevention side. But I want to talk first for a moment around the confidence that insurance carriers have in Arctic Wolf specifically, because the vast majority of our incident response business is non-Arctic Wolf customers that have been breached to the point where they reach out to their insurance carrier to make a claim, and then that insurance carrier brings in Arctic Wolf incident response services to help clean things up. Now, I mentioned because we do approximately 1,000 cases per year. I was just talking to one of our leads in this space just yesterday, and he said just yesterday alone, we had 4 cases coming in one day, 4 cases come in per day. And so that informs a lot of the preventative stuff that we can do on that side. And because we have a really keen understanding of how threat actors are actually being successful out in the wild, it informs our prevention capabilities, our detection logic. Ali, you were talking about this a little bit ago. It helps us in our security posture in-depth reviews or our mini assessments that we do for our customers, which is to say, this is how you can improve your security posture. These are the detection logics we built. This is how we can respond to these things. And because we become really, really effective at that, the insurance companies then in return are starting to view our customers very, very favorably. Because we understand so well what causes problems that we know how to prevent them, a lot of carriers are now starting to say, oh, if you have Arctic Wolf services in place for prevention, we're going to give you a more favorable set of terms. Now, those terms can be everything from increased coverage to lower retentions. Retention is a deductible, essentially, in layman's speak. In some cases, reduction in premiums of up to 25% as well, because of the confidence they have in our capabilities in prevention.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, you hit almost every critical aspect of that. Listen, when you're dealing with insurance companies, you either want to reduce your premiums or negotiate better coverage, right? I mean, these are the things that you want to do when you're going to the table with insurance companies. The way to do that is to prove demonstrably that your security controls are adequate, right? And SentinelOne has gone a long way to, even within our platform, to show that the detection, response, and recovery capabilities are not only operational and effective, but demonstrable, right? So that when you click on an event or an alert, it gives you a summary of the MITRE tactics. It gives you some response guidance. It gives you some idea of what you need to do to fix the problem that has occurred, or a clear indication that we have fixed it for you, right? Excuse me. So, more importantly, cyber insurance shouldn't be, I mean, it is a safety net, so to speak, but, it's not going to prevent you from getting breached. And no one wants to get breached, right? So you really do need to maintain a high level of proactive, preventative threat detection in place. You want to continue to reduce your attack surface, and you want to be able to engineer resilience into your environment, all the things that we spoke about today. And by not only doing it, but being able to show it and document it and show your insurance companies. I think, Michael, you just mentioned that it's been more difficult every year to prove that the controls you say you have are actually in place, or they're asking you, to show me more, right? So cyber insurance companies, it used to be that 10 years ago, they just send you a questionnaire. You said, yeah, I have AV, and you send it back and you're done, right? But now they're like, send me screenshots and prove to me that it's been running for the last X amount of time. And you're like, oh, how do I do that? Well, show them the logs, show them the events, show them how many agents are covered. Oh, show them your CMDB. Hopefully they don't ask for an inventory, so these kinds of things, your tools need to be able to allow you to prove that you're being proactive in your detection and prevention.
Absolutely. Well, we are almost out of time. Bill, Al, Tim, I cannot thank you all enough for just the really thoughtful conversation that we had here. And to everyone that joined us this morning, really appreciate your presence. If you guys have additional follow-up questions, please reach out to anybody at Lightedge, and we can either hook you up with the Arctic Wolf or SentinelOne or Lightedge teams. And happy to answer any questions. You can tell that the 4 of us could talk about this stuff all day ad nauseum. So happy to help continue protecting our customers out here, and look forward to continued conversations. So thank you all, and to our panelists, thank you guys again for joining us.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, folks.
Bye, guys.
It was a pleasure.